Great Yorkshire Business on Great Yorkshire Radio.
You know, it's always a pleasure to be joined by Peter Gibson from Coa Solicitors. And the topic for this week's podcast is, we're going to be talking about conveyancing. How important is it that you get this right when you're buying a property? So, Peter, tell me more. Over to you.
Hi, Steve. Good to see you. If you're buying anything, it's always important to get it checked out. And if you're buying a property, which is generally for most people the most expensive, most valuable transaction that they ever undertake in their lives, it's really important to get that right, get the right advice, get the property checked out with a survey, and make sure that you are connected to water and sewerage, that you haven't got a liability to pay for some church repairs down the road. Make sure that you aren't affected by various gases that are in the ground, etc. Make sure that the property has proper legal title and that you're going to own it properly. These sound terribly dull things.
Do you know, you've just raised a really interesting one for me as you were talking there, because gases in the ground, you see. Yeah. Now, what's that? Could be methane, could it?
Well, it could be a range of gases, and what we generally recommend is that we carry out an environmental report as part of the searches that we have carried out for a property. And that environmental report will alert us to any particularly known sites of, a former rubbish tip where landfill has been occupied, which would be giving off something like methane. Yeah. And then there are other gases that are present in the ground, and that environmental report will reveal some of those things. So, we're about getting all of the information about the property that you can't see. It's all very well saying, nice kitchen, nice aspect, nice views, etc. But you want to know that they're not about to build, a great big commercial warehouse right next door to your house and block your view. And the legal work is involved in checking a lot of these things out for you.
And I know from experience, Peter, in terms of right away, for example, could be worth checking. You might have bought a lovely cottage in the countryside.
Well, there's this old saying, there's funny things in rural parts. And,
That's an interesting comment.
There are funny things in rural parts. And certainly rights of way and access in rural areas does throw up some issues and problems from time to time. So it's very important to get those things checked out. Over the number of the years that I've been in practice, I have seen, a number of people fall out over not necessarily sort of public rights of way in terms of footpaths, but more neighbours who've got access over. It could be a yard, it could be an alley, it could be a back garden where one's got to access one through the other.
And what about boundary disputes, Peter? Because they can be interesting, can't they?
They can be very lucrative, I can tell you that. My practical, common sense, grounded advice in respect of a boundary dispute is don't have one. Do not have a boundary dispute. But if you do, we can help you.
Right, okay.
Another bit of practical advice would be that it makes an awful lot of sense, and it's far cheaper and far quicker and far easier if people can put their pride on the shelf,
right,
and sit round a table with a cup of tea and a plate of biscuits with somebody who's maybe an independent arbitrator, mediator, and try and get them sorted out, rather than coming to us to try and, I'm doing myself out of business here, rather than trying to sort of have a fight with people, because these are people that you're probably going to end up staying next door living to for a number of years. And if you can get things sorted out amicably, and generally there's not actually anything to argue about. It's about, whether a fence is 1 inch or 2 inch or 3 inch.
I'd got a comment come in my mind, it could be about 6 inches, but I didn't want to go there.
This is a family show.
Yes, yeah.
But the boundary disputes, they're generally, they're very divisive, they're very painful, and they can be very costly and expensive. So my practical advice is don't have one if you could possibly do so. And as part of a conveyancing process, when you're buying a property, we will check out those things, and there are questions about whether any boundaries have been moved or altered, or whether there has been any dispute. So that's, again, part of the processes of properly buying a house through a solicitor.
And Peter, when somebody is buying a property, if they've had an issue with a neighbour,
Yep.
does it have to be reported now?
It's got to be disclosed.
That's what I meant,
Yeah.
disclosed.
So if I'm buying your house, Steve, and you've had a complaint, dispute, argument, any sort of issue with your neighbour to the left of you, to the right of you, or behind you, you have to tell me. Because if you don't tell me, you have misrepresented to me the situation and circumstances in respect of the property.
Right.
So honesty is always the best policy. Because if you don't, then I've got to come back. I could come back to you and say, you didn't tell me about this.
Yeah.
You've misled me.
Right, got you.
I've suffered a loss. I'm going to sue you now.
Right, okay, all right. So honesty, the best policy. And you touched earlier when we were talking today about, the view of the house. It's nice kitchen, nice decorations, nice thing. But how important is it to have that survey done?
Oh, absolutely essential. Unless you are buying a property that is a complete wreck and you are going to demolish it, property, buildings, in particularly old buildings, have all sorts of things that have gone wrong with them. People have messed about with them, altered them, added to them, changed things. And getting an expert in buildings come along, take a look, lift floorboards, look in the loft, lift carpets, look above and beyond and behind, and go up ladders, and maybe even send a drone up to look down the chimney stack, for example.
Well, okay, right.
All sorts of things that you can't see from ground level looking at a property. How many of us know what wet rot looks like, what dry rot looks like, what rising damp looks like, and all of these issues? So getting a building survey done on a property that you're going to invest in, probably your biggest expense in your life ever, somewhere that's going to be a home for you and your family for years to come, getting that property right and making sure that you're fully informed about it is absolutely the right thing to do. And so it might be, I don't know, 300, 400, 500 pounds, but that's money very well and truly well spent.
And building regs can change as well, because I remember when we bought an old cottage, and when we had this surveying done, and we had to have a firewall built in the loft because there was a space between the cottages, and for years that had been okay.
Yeah.
But the building regs changed.
Yeah. I once lived in a terraced house myself, and there was no dividing wall between the attics.
That's it.
Up above. So yeah, I have come across that problem before.
So well worth getting that done.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and
Absolutely.
And making the right investment, because just think about this. It's a big investment. You could be there for years. Well worth checking out, and not just forget thinking about the colour of the wallpaper for
Absolutely.
a minute. Make sure you can change that. You can't change it if your roof's falling off easily. So Peter, if people want to get in touch with you and help and get some advice, and do you help them with the conveyancing, how can they do that?
There are lots of ways to get in touch with us: website, telephone, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. But if you just simply Google Cole Solicitors, you're going to find our nearest office to you here in Yorkshire and the Tees Valley.
Brilliant. Thanks for joining us today.
Pleasure, as
Thank you.
always, Steve. Thank you.
Great Yorkshire Business on Great Yorkshire Radio.